For a good reason, because we really have had a long session with a lot of, I hope, interesting angles to the issue of power and responsibility. Of course, it's an open invitation for you to think about this, to talk about this also, to think about this banana, again, not in terms of the single banana, but of the whole bunch, as I just learned that it is called. It's also about, understanding, for instance, that power without ethics is worthless, but maybe also to think that ethics without power is powerless. And for many firms, I think that is an important lesson also. It's also from the firm perspective, these were, of course, statements that I wanted to discuss in the panel discussion. But you can imagine that the example of Plus Today gives a very interesting example of how you really can decide for yourself, if you don't do enough as a firm, that you can do enough. If other firms do not do enough, you can even get a unique selling point and a competitive advantage out of that. With a business model, not just as philanthropists. So ethics without power is powerless in this sense. From the NGO perspective, it hasn't been part really of the whole discussion, but the whole idea of human rights and empowerment is where power and responsibility get together. And how these two dimensions, as Jan Pronk also explained in his speech, have to get together, and they are seriously political as the individual or the personal is political. So I think the whole idea of human rights becomes more and more important. Not human rights as a negative approach, but as a positive approach. And firms do not have to fear only that they will be accused of power abuse, but they might have to fear that they will be accused of not using their power enough for responsibility goals. This, of course, is a very difficult area. And we have discussions with Amnesty International, for instance, how to do that. Should you allow yourself to partner as an NGO with the firm? Can you trust that they have the right ambitions? And as George Yip also said today, you might not. So the dean of the business school said, well, businesses are not always honest there. And then we have the question of moving from a niche market to a mainstream market that we were discussing today. From the African perspective, from the producer's perspective, via the retailer's perspective to the finance perspective. And then, of course, there was the whole discussion on the labeling initiative. To what extent can you, as a labeling organization, make it happen? And then, of course, the final party in this whole story is the government. And one of the statements that we prepared for today was, in fact, that governments are not using their powers effectively in support of sustainability. We can have a discussion on that, and of course it's the right time to start having some drinks then at the same time. And finally, we are a scientific institution, and we clearly know that we have immense agenda setting and framing powers. And we know also that, for instance, in the publish or perish race that George Yip referred to, well, sometimes we're very eager to get our results published in short press releases that might influence a debate in the wrong direction. So we have immense powers, but it's important to use them also here effectively. So wrapping this up, these are some of the slides we can discuss. We will continue to discuss in the coming years. There's no doubt about that.